This is James Mathers at NAB 2018 for the Digital Cinema Society and New Bay Media. I'm here with Michael Cioni of Light Iron and Panavison, and here we go again with another DXL. Improvements, updates, lenses. Tell us about it.
We just did this last year, didn't we? I thought so, but we really like hearing people's feedback. And so, you know, a lot of it is actually the comments on things like this, because you get a lot of people that give a lot of weird comments, but you also get a lot of valuable comments. And because our customer base at Panavision is small, we can try to be more specific to people's specific needs. So that's kind of the objective. So trade shows are an important part for us, because even though we don't sell this camera to thousands and thousands of people, the experts are here, right? And they have the answers. So what we worked on for this year is more sensitivity. What people are doing in a lot of their photographic trends right now is more ambient use of light and more natural lighting, and then they're augmenting that in different ways. And so we're hearing people regularly pushing cameras from 800 to 1200 to 1600, and they're rating them faster than they originally were. So working with Red and the new Monstro sensor, we're now able to have a native 1600, which gives people that extra boost without gaining up, right? So they already have a native. Now if they want to gain up to 32, that's fine, or higher than that. But starting at 1600 gives you a lot more flexibility in your low light without any noise penalty. If you go down to 800, you actually have minus 3 dB of grain, so you have like negative gain, so it's even cleaner. So some people that want to stay really clean, 800 is going to give you even a better picture, which can be good. So 1600 native ISO is a big deal, but also the new Monstro sensor is 16 stops of dynamic range. And you know, dynamic range, there's a lot of different ways to measure it, and I admit that different people measure it differently and can come to different conclusions. That's not incorrect. There are different ways to measure it. There's different ways to make a cake, and they all can taste pretty good, right? So what this technique that we use actually can expose up to 21 stops of total dynamic range sensitivity, but what we at Panavision have done is try to identify what is the last usable stop. Because we don't want to give you a marketing answer of what's possible theoretically. We want to give you what's practical. And so the practical solution that we've got is 16 usable stops. And that 16th stop is not going to be so in the weeds that you're going to have to crush it down. Where some people might rate a stop that it's there, but it's going to turn to black because it's too noisy to make use of. So the 16th stop on this DXL2 is actually real. You can light it, you can see it, you can sculpt it, you can color it. And then 17, 18, 19, 20, that's where you are going to be burying noise and things like that. So we're really proud of what we call Sweet 16. It's 1600 ISO, 16 stops dynamic range. Those by themselves make this camera really awesome, but other feedback that we've gotten from people, including today in the Vitek booth, is more integration with third-party hand units. So this is the latest updated RT Motion wireless handset, which now has mapping into it, so I can actually map the focus and iris to either a monitor or the hand unit itself, and I get accurate representations to the inch on the performance of that, all without any cables tied to the lens or any cables tied to the radio or the MDR. So all that becomes wireless, and Vitek's been really great in integrating those types of things. Plus, you know, what I think specifically about Vitek and why we're here that's important for the DXL program is they're a workflow company, and Panavision and Light Iron are together because we're a workflow company. And so one of the things we really like about this is trying to make more of this stuff be more invisible, right? And so I can't give you too much information, but if you look here and be like, oh, some of the things on here are hanging off of it, well, what would it be like if those were integrated, right? And so that's kind of the thing that's important. Having an MDR, lenses, motors, cables integrated was a huge project. It's just insane.
But those drives are inside the lens.
The drives are inside the lens, and so that's part of what makes it special. And then being able to communicate with different third-party groups is also a challenge, because everybody has their own recipe, right? So DXL talks Arri, C-Motion, RT Motion, Preston, Tilta. So it's what is that, pentalingual? So, you know, I just made it up. So we want to keep that trend going and make more integration, and that's pretty significant. The last thing that's really cool about this is people want unique looks. And one of the things that I find in my travels is that different regions kind of have a look for that culture. You know, like you go to different countries, they shoot, they light, they color a specific way. And one of the things I think is foolish for Americans is just to be like, well, our way is the right way, because that's not necessarily true. Now, we do what we like, and since a lot of content comes from New York and LA, that's kind of the look of things. But you go to other places, they look different. What we found that people seem to agree on is they like film stocks. And film stocks are something that people have partly an homage to, they have an understanding of, but also it makes things have less ubiquity. If you have all these shows all over the world, nobody wants everything to look like everybody else. You want to have something look signature, something different. So what we've done with the newest Light Iron Color is Light Iron Color 2 has new film emulation LUTs that are really interesting. So these are actual LUTs based on real film stocks and film tonal curves that can independently be changed on the fly, and each one is saved to the as a sidecar file to each take. So if you cycled through them in the course of a day, you wouldn't have to chase it later with a database. So this is actually really cool, refined results on our latest film stock emulations. They're gorgeous. And what a lot of people think about highlights is they judge digital cameras by their highlight roll-off. Highlight roll-off is not necessarily a sensor performance, it's a mapping issue. So a sensor can perform a certain way, but if you map it the way film maps things, it looks more filmic. And if you map it more linear, the way digital behaves natively, it looks more digital. So we're using cues from 100 years of Kodak and Fuji's success, and we're better mapping the way they did. And it's not just a highlight, it's how skin tone changes, it's tonal curves in the mids, right? All of that is part of what makes it kind of unique. And so Light Iron Color 2 is a very, very cinematic look. It almost looks like you have a filter on the lens. It's got so much tonal curve response that you'd swear you put up a black pro mist or something like that that created the look, and it's all being done with tonal curves on film response.
Well, Panavision also has a lot of experience with large format. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that's right. You know, there's not enough glass in the world to satisfy the demand right now, which is a good problem for glass makers, good problem for rental agents and things like that, so that's good. We believe in the large format growth is so significant. It's like it's a rocket. It's just taken off. And so what Panavision's been lucky is we have 60 years of large format history. Many of those lenses were not used. They were not popular in the 80s and 90s and noughties. So now it's like getting those back. So that's really good. However, lens technology has advanced since then. So some people that want a vintage look, we already have those lenses, and those are pretty significant. But some people need a modern look with large format, and so we're building more and more of those as well. And we're kind of borrowing techniques from both worlds, both eras, and those are creating a little bit of a kind of a new look. I'm a big fan of what large format's doing, and a lot of people haven't had the opportunity to try it yet, except in still format, right? And in stills, we're kind of used to having a big sensor. It's pretty awesome. But now giving people that big sensor in motion is a new thing. And I mean, I don't want to be presumptuous, but most people that use this camera or any other large format camera and try it out don't want to go back. That's a very common thing that they voluntarily say. It's like, I can't go back because they're getting shots that they either physically couldn't get before or optically couldn't get before. And there's also something about the lack of distortion. Through being on wider apertures, you have less distortion cues so that you can physically be closer to subjects with less trapezoidal effect. And that really, you know, changes the game when you want to be intimate with an actor, you know, instead of be telephoto. And I'm not saying which way is right or wrong. I'm just saying that large format's opening up doors that simply were closed before. And so we love to see people testing it for the first time.
Well, let's all say a prayer for the focus pullers. And
oh my gosh, I know. Here's what we say. I know the focus pullers hate us because this lens is kind of slow. This is a measly T2 large format lens. We actually have a series of lenses called Primo Artiste, which are 1.8, and then we have a new series of lenses that are T1s, and another series that's going to be 1.4s. So, while we know focus pullers will hate us, the audiences are going to gravitate towards these images because they're going to pop off the screen and give you the look of 3D without glasses, because it's all about Z-depth. The realism through this two-dimensional medium we view together is in creating depth cues that are artificial because it's all 2D. The large format and shallow depth of field enhances those depth cues. So even though it makes someone's job a lot harder, if the objective is to make a more dynamic image, this is necessary in order to do that. Now, thankfully, a lot of groups have come up with tools to help focus, right? So something like the new Light Ranger system is a new tool that can plug actually directly into DXL through our serial port, and you can actually have an autofocus assistant to help you with some of those really tricky shots, because it's going to use 3D mapping on there with a laser system that allows it to be enhanced. So there is new focus assist technology, plus monitors are better, right? They're brighter, there's more contrast, and there's more tools with that. So even though the focus is harder, everything's evolving, right?
We're all going to need a lot of help.
We're all going to need a lot of help. And so we don't wish to create enemies. We're all after making a better picture, and in the name of a better picture, a faster stop, a higher ISO, and shallower depth of field are all components of making that happen. But it looks good. What can I say?
Brave new world. Thank you, Michael.
You got it. Thank you.